Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Hey interwebs! Greetings, this is Jackie K and welcome to the KCast. Today I'm going to be focusing on the most recent Pokemon Sun and Moon news. This is going to be the first time I talk about Pokemon updates in general for the KCast, so we have way too much ground to cover all in one video. So I might focus with the newer stuff and go back to some of my favorite stuff with the old stuff. Before we go on to that topic though, I know some of you may be trying to avoid as much spoilers or any information on the games as possible so you can go in with as fresh of a mind as you can. So let me get the channel updates out of the way, and I'll be sure to let you guys know with a disclaimer when we get to the point where I'm going to be talking about the new Sun and Moon stuff. So in regards to the channel and my online activity, as you've probably seen, I did get 2 episodes of Chibi Rebel Ziplash out this week. And I do have 2 more to go, but I gotta get the descriptions taken care of. If I can find some time today, that shouldn't be any issue, so I'll have those up next Tuesday and Wednesday. I don't know if I have any more videos, or at least can get them ready by the following week. I'll be sure to keep you guys tuned in on that though. I also realized that I have a custom amiibo speed paint video sitting in my uploads, just about ready to go. I'll probably make it public when I get done recording this. So if it's not up by the time you see this podcast, it'll be up very soon. Besides that, I think I'm gonna try to focus a bit less on videos for this in the following month, because I realized that there's a special project that I wanted to have ready to go by the mid of September, and it's already August. And one of these weekends I'm going to another convention, so that's going to eat up some spare time that I normally would have to prepare it. It shouldn't be taking too long, but this is kind of a huge step for me, so I've been a little hesitant, and I guess I procrastinated it for a while. But you'll find out what I mean very soon. Now with that out of the way, onwards to Sun and Moon. So, if you are trying to avoid new information on Sun and Moon so you can play the games as fresh as possible, I encourage you to stop listening to the podcast here, because I am not going to talk anything more than the new Sun and Moon info. Though I do want to go into other Pokemon topics, I do think it would be best to save them for another day, because I have so much ground to cover with Sun and Moon. Before you go though, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it. And if you want more updates in the future, be sure to subscribe to this channel. Otherwise, if you want to follow me on social media for your updates, you can do so on quite an array of places. If you don't mind just me blabbing about whatever's on my mind as well as getting updates, you can follow me on Twitter at JacketStuff, spelt the same way Jackie K is on the channel. If you prefer Facebook updates, you can do so at Jacket K. For videos, it's JACKITK. For cosplay and amiibo updates, it is KACKITKAY. And I have other places too, but they're not really relevant to this video, so I'll leave them to you to find. Now, onwards with the main topic. So, on August 11th, 2016, we got a new trailer from the Pokemon Company, their official Pokemon channel, I should say. And this is in regards to, we finally got a reveal on the EVO organization, as well as some new Pokemon and some new forms of previous Pokemon. For those of you who are new to the Pokemon news, the previous week, Pokemon revealed that several of the old Pokemon from past games are going to be getting new forms. And while that alone isn't anything new because Pokemon have gotten new forms in the past, it previously has been more exclusive to legendaries and other event Pokemon. And a lot of times they don't really change that drastically. For example, in Diamond and Pearl, from the transition to those games to Pokemon Platinum, we got quite a few new forms for some of the legendaries in the game. Giratina gained the ability to levitate in this new form, while Shaman is another legendary Pokemon that got a new form in Pokemon Platinum, and it actually got a new type, as well as having its stats rearranged to be more of an attacker rather than just having completely even stats down the board. However, the one thing I find that makes these new Aloha forms real drastic from new forms that we've seen in any previous game, some of these Pokemon are changing types completely. We have some that are kind of standard, just getting new types on top of their old types. Or if they're a dual type, changing one of those two types. For example, Executor is getting a new form, and oh boy, I could talk for a good chunk of time just on that Pokemon alone. But let me get my example out of the way first. It is originally a Grass Psychic type. However, the Aloha form of Executor is Grass Dragon. That seems really odd at first, but trust me on this, when you actually go to look it up, learn your facts, research it a little, it actually makes a little bit of sense. But my point being, before I get completely off tangent, some Pokemon are completely changing in type altogether. For example, Sandshrew is getting a new Aloha form, and ironically, is turning from a ground type to an ice type. Yeah, and this is supposed to be the tropic area region. Though I am glad they're learning from the mistakes that I felt Hoenn went through, where you make a tropical island-like area, and don't forget to actually have any ice types because they kind of don't fit in that certain region. So I am glad they're trying to find ways to incorporate ice types into this world. Oh, and it is worth noting that they're getting new abilities on top of this. Not new abilities, but abilities they haven't had in their older forms. The ice ones aren't too interesting because I believe they're just Snow Cloak, which is a move that raises your evasion in hail, which is kind of a generic ice ability. It's at least getting to that point. And Aloha Executor's ability isn't too interesting. Frisk does have some competitive use, but I personally find Harvest Executor a lot more interesting and fun to work with. Granted, we don't know for sure, but I got this gut feeling that the Pokemon that you transfer over aren't going to immediately change into these new forms, so it is possible to work with both the old and new forms in the region, so you're not stuck with one or the other. At least that's what I believe. We don't know that much about them yet. I just got a feeling from what we have heard and seen. Anyways, I think with all that, I can actually start talking about the stuff in the trailer for this week. Because there are some new Aloha forms. I swear that topic has a bit of tangent. I need to catch everyone else who might not be familiar with what an Alolan Pokemon is up to speed. But I got them right here, and they are Meowth, Raichu, and Marowak. First and foremost is Meowth. Eh, I'm not wowed by it, but I'm not disliking of it either. It's kind of nice. It's just a bit generic, especially compared to Aloha Pokemon we've seen in the past. It's got the same abilities that Meowth normally would have, and it just changes from a normal to a dark type. I find that nice though, and the backstory they have on the Pokemon on the website is actually pretty nice and fits into the theme of why the Alolan Meowth is dark type. I'll leave that for you guys to read and discuss though. It kind of actually reminds me of Purloin from the 5th generation. That's probably why they made it a dark type. It's pretty much a Meowth that's more like a Purloin. So I guess that's why I'm not wowed by it, but I don't hate it. Up next we have Alolan Raichu, which is definitely... I can't even say it's my favorite because that and the next one, I don't even want them to compete. It is the most adorable yet though. I don't know, it looks like a plush that you can hug. And I am kind of glad that they're giving Raichu a bit more love, considering Pikachu's gotten so much of the attention. But Raichu is a Pokemon that you're probably going to use if you want Pikachu to be viable. Granted, Nintendo's tried to make Pikachu a viable option in battling as well, but heck though, with all these items and cosplay forms and that they've given Pikachu, it definitely gets all the love, so it's not a bad thing to drive some attention back to Raichu. What I find really exciting about it is that it's an electric psychic type. Dang, I can't even think of an electric psychic type off the top of my head. Though I'd be amazed if it was actually the first electric psychic type. There's gotta be other Pokemon that I'm just not thinking of at the moment. Now, I'm not so sure about his ability because it requires electric terrain to be activated. But I'm sure if you can incorporate that into your moveset, it's definitely worth it. Because the ability Surge Surfer is a brand new ability, and it doubles the speed of the Pokemon ones in the terrain, which pretty much already gives it an edge over Pikachu. But I think what I really like about it is just how it looks in the trailer. It just surfs on his tail, and I've seen some fun theories floating around online that this was inspired by the one episode of the Pokemon anime where Ash and friends meet up with a surfer and a surfing Pikachu, which would make sense because it had the psychic abilities to foresee waves in the future. It might be a little bit of a stretch, but it's a fun fan theory. And I love the custom amiibo I've seen of it already. Yeah, someone already made an amiibo about it. If you follow Grand Krista like I do, you probably already seen it, but I'll try to remember to link it in the description of this video so you guys can as well. For those of you that are listening to it though, how do I emphasize the name best in an audio only setting? Granda Krista? I'm not positive on that though, but I'm sure if you Google Alolan Raichu amiibo, you'll find it either way. It is amazing. But while I'm on the tangent of amiibo, I do want to question why we haven't heard anything about amiibo functionality in this game yet. On one hand, I know it'd be kind of forcing it in there, but on the other hand, this is Pokemon. It is one of Nintendo's biggest moneymakers. It just seems like the type of series that you would try to squeeze some sort of amiibo functionality in to sell your stuff. And I know a ton of people would want to buy even Pokemon cards with amiibo functionality, let alone the figures. I'm sure if they're gonna have it, time will come to reveal it. I'm trying to make sure that I've got all that out of my mind before moving back into the new Pokemon. I feel like there's something else I want to say about those amiibos, but I can always save that for next week. Especially if next week's gonna be the amiibo topic. So yeah, to summarize, Alolan Raichu, I like it. It's cute in an odd way, and I love how it could possibly be a reference to the anime. A very subtle one that doesn't actually force anything in one to be canon to the other. Last but certainly not least, on the new Alolan form Pokemon, we have Alolan Marowak. This guy's cool. Definitely one of the more amazing forms we've seen so far. It is definitely the coolest form we've seen so far. And even though I wasn't normally a fan of Marowak, but this is probably my second favorite form right next to Alolan Executor. First and foremost, it's got a complete change in its typing. It is a Fire Ghost type, which on one hand makes sense because it basically its bone became a ghostly flame weapon, but on the other hand, doesn't really look like a ghost besides that. And it now has the Cursed Body ability, but it can still have the potential of having its Lightning Rod ability. I do want to emphasize, I'm pretty sure Pokemon don't change into this form, you just find them that way, but I can only just go with my gut, because we have not technically have official confirmation one way or another, but I'm pretty sure your Pokemon aren't going to magically change when they get popped into the game if you transfer them or something. But yeah, Lightning Rod, it's so hard to find a Lightning Rod on Pokemon that aren't already ground type or electric types. So the fact we have a Fire Ghost type that with Lightning Rod really excites me. I just feel like it has some potential to make not exactly radically change, not even shake up, but it might be fun to use in a competitive battle or two. Reading the description on their site, it looks like that the theory behind Marowak is it was in the lower region. Grass types are natural enemies to Marowaks, apparently. I never thought that typing would be enough to scare off a Pokemon, though. Apparently, it's a really weird but interesting backstory. They didn't like grass types, so they didn't just change because of that, but they changed because they were close together, but they gained a sixth sense from being close together, and that somehow changed their type. Again, I gotta emphasize how cool this design is. If you haven't seen already, I recommend going to the Pokemon site and looking it up yourself. It looks kind of like a dark, badass version of itself, and that ghostly flame double mace, man, I'm probably describing it the worst way possible because I don't know my weapons very well, but dang, it looks cool. Wow, I thought this was going to be a short video because I was trying to rush out this podcast because I have been putting it off for so long. But I apparently spent 20 minutes already. Give me one moment to get some more water to refresh my voice because it's still hot out and I'm trying to not have too much background noise. let me get a drink and we'll resume the talk of the new Sun and Moon stuff with the new Pokemon they revealed in that trailer. Okay, I know I said I was going to move on to new Pokemon, but I remember something really important that I wanted to talk about before changing the tangent. As my overall thoughts on the new Aloha Pokemon, if you couldn't tell, I like the concept and I'm glad they're going through with it. Though I am concerned with a rumor I've heard and how it might affect the whole concept. I don't normally talk about rumors and leaks on the KayCast, but this isn't as much about the rumor as much as it is about some feelings I've been having about Pokemon lately. So, the rumors goes that the Aloha form Pokemon are going to be exclusive to the first generation of Pokemon. Meaning all the Pokemon that you could find in Red, Blue, Yellow, and the remakes. Now, I'm kind of worried about a trend I've been noticing with the first generation of Pokemon. I love the first generation as much as any fan does. They are the generation that got me into it. I have been in this series since the beginning, and I do have Pokemon I like from that generation. But I also like Pokemon from other generations, and generations like the second, the third, even the fourth are kind of becoming old Pokemon at this point. And I feel, but I can't help but feel that Pokemon Company's focusing too much on the first generation just because it was the original. Because the fans that are dedicated only to the original Pokemon need to be appealed to. You know another series that I don't like because it caters way too much to fans of the originals? Mario. Now, I'm not saying nostalgia is bad or never cater to your older audiences or never make a reference to past stuff. Even in Mario games, I've had instances that I've seen these sorts of elements done well. I personally feel when making a sequel, you gotta have a balance between things people like about the original and new elements that actually make it something different from the original. And especially lately, I feel Mario games fall way too much on the left end of the scale. They're not always the far left, but more to the left than I would like. That is a topic that I'd rather go into another day though, because I could probably spend a whole podcast, or at least a section of a podcast, talking about that alone. I could easily come up with a good 15 minutes out of that topic alone, and I don't want to do that because this is about Pokemon, not any other game series. I bring it up though because I am a little worried that Pokemon's heading down that same path. I mean, when we're getting to a point that you're going and cutting out original elements from your spin-off series to make them more Mario-esque, that just is going too far. Again, no. All of that will probably have to be a topic for another day. I might even be able to do a whole video just on my opinions on the Mario series, and a separate video about how I feel about the Mario spin-off series these days compared to how I used to feel. Back on the tangent of Pokemon though, I am concerned that Pokemon heading down a similar path. Just replace Mario 1, 2, 3, and maybe World with Generation 1. I do confess that if it wasn't for hearing of this rumor, I wouldn't be worried about this at all. But now that it's been brought up, it's made me think about how the past generation has been with Pokemon. And it's got me concerned. Especially because it is true. So far, we've only had Kanto Pokemon revealed to have an Aloha form. And if you go back to X and Y, it was a game that came out right after Nintendo tried to go a completely new path, bringing back none of the Pokemon from past games, doing completely original Pokemon, much more taking the plot a bit more seriously than previous Pokemon games. Well, I'm not quite sure how to describe it right now, but I know it felt new to me at least, and I know it felt new to a lot of friends, the whole 5th generation and its plot. And then, but it was at a time, especially at its release, not many people liked that. A lot of people disliked the fact that there was nothing but new Pokemon. A lot of people weren't on board with a lot of the other elements of Black and White. So, in that sense, it would make sense to go in a complete opposite direction and focus more on the old and the past and the previous in comparison to the new. Ironically, I feel this is X and Y's biggest problem. It has the least amount of new Pokemon introduced out of any generation, and a lot of those Pokemon are just part of their evolution branches as well. And ironically enough, we didn't really get too many new Pokemon with a new evolution, or should I say, Pokemon from past generations getting a new evolution. That got completely replaced by the whole Mega Evolution mechanic. And don't get me wrong, I do love that Mega Evolution mechanic, and I really hope it comes back in Sun and Moon, though I completely understand if it doesn't. Wow, even that is a whole nother topic on this chain of tangents that I'll have to remember to talk about in the future. Point being, X and Y focused a lot on the old rather than introducing new, and did refine a lot of things that people have been asking about for a while. Improved the multiplayer system, introduced a mechanic that made old Pokemon feel new again. And while that X and Y was fine in the sense that the whole Mega Evolution concept wasn't just exclusive to the first generation. Looking back on it all, there were quite a few red flags that came up in the 6th generation of Pokemon that are not assured by this rumor at all. For one, we got 2 sets of starters in X and Y. The new Pokemon and the 1st generation starters, the Kanto Pokemon. I actually thought this was a good idea at the time, because it did allow you to get away to have a Mega Evolution Pokemon later on down the road. It isn't helped by the fact that when we moved on to Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, remakes of the 3rd generation, games that should be focusing on those Pokemon, that was where we got a lot of the Kanto Mega Evolutions. And when I think more about it, even in X and Y, quite a few of those Mega Evolutions were of Kanto Pokemon. I understand if you feel like I'm exaggerating this a bit, because we have seeing Pokemon from other generations besides the first introduced in the gameplay so far. Right off the top of my head, I remember seeing Aloha in one of the gameplay trailers they showed off back in the Treehouse event. I just want to address this issue while I was young, and just my concern about it becoming a common trend. I do admit I didn't really explain how Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire fit into this too well. It's mostly just my beef with so many Kanto Pokemon. And not just that, Kanto Pokemon that don't appear in the main game being Mega Evolutions. I get post-game, but I felt like it just feels way too much like pandering to the beginning, not acknowledging that there might be some people who like the middle too. I just don't want to see Pokemon go down that path. Now, doing this for one game isn't a problem to me. Like I said, I like the first generation. So giving a nod to it while still making it new is a perfect idea. Though if this continues onwards into X Sun and Moon, I'm gonna be worried. Because it's more to Pokemon than the brand new Sun and Moon, than Pokemon Go. And more to Pokemon than Kanto, first generation, Bulbasaur, Charmander, Squirtle, Pikachu. There's a huge section of Pokemon in between. And if we go down this path of keeping new forms exclusive to the very first generation of Pokemon, then there's all this stuff in the middle we leave behind. And now that I'm done ranting my heart out about all things Aloha form related, maybe now I can talk about the new Pokemon. Granted, I don't find too much to talk about with the 3 new Pokemon they introduced, because I'm just not as much of a fan of them as I have been of some of the previous Sun and Moon Pokemon they've introduced. Probably the most interesting one to me is Wishy-Washy, and it's pretty much a generic water type. It's even got the gimmick that we've seen with Gyarados and Feebas of, oh, it seems like just a weak Pokemon, but if you look closely enough, there's a huge secret inside. Granted, Wishy-Washy seems to be doing it in a different way from those Pokemon, where with Magikarp it evolves into a Gyarados, and Feebas it evolves into a Monolic. Wishy-Washy doesn't get an evolution. Instead, it gets an ability to make it tougher. And I've seen some people argue that this ability is just evolution, and I don't blame them. Let me just paraphrase the description for this Pokemon on the site. A single Wishy-Washy is tiny and weak, even for the Aloha region. Or should I say even for a Pokemon. And yet it is feared in the Aloha region. When it's in danger, its eyes glisten and shine out, sending out an SOS signal to its allies. And that's where its new ability Schooling comes into play. All we currently know about is that it activates at a certain level. We don't really know for sure what level, in the sense of level you gain from experience, level of health. None of that has really been revealed, but when those conditions have been met, it turns into a school form. Which makes it kind of look like a giant fish monster. I don't know whether we've seen that before. And all these Pokemon together apparently make it so powerful that even Gyarados fear it. That seems a little far-fetched to me, but I do admit I do find the Pokemon cute looking, so it's got that going for it. I'm tempted to even consider it for my team when I actually play the game for myself, but... Oh yeah, I just remembered that I'm gonna go with Pablio for my starter, so... Sorry, Wishy Wishy. You probably won't be in the first playthrough. And then it only goes downhill from here. We got Puki Muki, which is apparently based on a sea cucumber. I'll give it props, that's a pretty cool concept and idea. I'm not the biggest fan of its design though. I don't think I really have a Pokemon to hate yet, but it's probably the least exciting water type I've seen so far. It's got an interesting ability though. At first when I saw that it had the inner outs ability and saw it in the trailer, I was like, oh, Nintendo's trying to push another new ability. They're trying to push an old ability as a new ability by just changing its name again, because this inner out ability does damage when it faints. However, I actually went and read up on the Nintendo site, and not only does it have an interesting story, inner out's ability works a bit differently from the whole aftermath. Essentially, when it faints, it does the amount of it'll do one last bit of damage to the Pokemon, and it's based on how much HP it had left. So it would do more damage if you one-hit KO it compared to just finishing it off in the red health. And that could be really cool in battling. I am actually excited to see how this plays out. Wish I could say the same thing for this last Pokemon, but everyone's gotta have their least favorites, even myself, and for me, I'm not sure if I'm a fan of Morlaw. I think I am gonna stick with it being my least favorite so far, if only to actually pick a least favorite Pokemon. I don't know, I like the fact that we're actually getting a Grass Fairy type, but at the same time, there's been so many Pokemon already that could easily pass as a Grass Fairy type. And it doesn't have any interesting abilities, at least anything new. And it doesn't even have a signature move or so. It did a sleeping move in the trailer, but that was just Spore. I could tell from the way it looked. And Spore has been done on so many other Pokemon already in much better ways. It's just nothing about this Pokemon that to really catch my eye. Nothing to really make me too interested in it. If you like it, that's perfectly fine. I won't stop you from liking it. And I can see how it would look nice in the right eyes. It's just not one for me. And since I've pretty much gone on about Sun and Moon for 40 minutes already, I might as well just summarize my thoughts of the last thing of the trailer. And that would be the team's organization. Long story short, I haven't really seen enough to have an opinion one way or another towards them. On one hand, I see why people are complaining about these guys not being too interesting, being generic grunts, not really having anything big like past teams had. On the other hand, I like the subtle hints that there's a chemistry or history. I shouldn't have said chemistry out loud, but you get what I mean, like, if you see it at least. They have a history, and I'm curious to see how that plays into the game. I know they try to do something similar with Sun and Moon, where... Excuse me, I mean X and Y. The organization leader that had ties to the professor, but it didn't really go anywhere. So I'm hoping that with Sun and Moon, they actually go somewhere with that whole element. It has the potential to really spice up the story. Besides that, though, I haven't really seen anything about the team that impresses me. I don't hate them, and they look like they'll be more interesting than Team Flare, but there's not much competition to make a team organization that I like more than Team Flare. Then again, X and Y, I'll have to talk about that game another time. I am running out of steam, so I'm gonna just wrap things up here. Thanks again for watching the KayCast. If you sat through this whole thing, leave a comment in the comments of the secret word. Just give me a second to think of what secret word should be. How about we go with, if you sat through this whole video, comment that you... If you sat through this whole video, leave a comment on the video that says Super Pika Brothers. And that will be your cue that'll be the cue to me that you either sat for this whole thing or skipped to the very end of the video. Either way, I appreciate it. I appreciate the fact that people would care enough about the video to actually go to the end rather than just quit right as soon as they see it, I should say. One more, since I can't think of a better way to close it off, I'll just remind you guys that if you like the YouTube channel stuff, like this video, subscribe if you want to see more updates, and I have social media pages. If you missed them from the beginning of the video, they'll be in the description of this video as well. I always try to keep at least some of them in every video I put up for you guys. I have been Jacket K, and I hope to see you next time. K.